Speaking of stuff or so, we got some Japanese stuff to talk about. Apparently, two influencers got banned from Japan for doing let me give you a hint. They were doing a prank in Japan. Wow, shocking. Oh my god, that's crazy. Wow. Anyways, Atosi has the video on for us specifically. Let's go take a look and see what's been happening. What did they do this time?
This video got two influencers banned from Japan because essentially this stunt was supposed to generate attention online. But after two Americans entered the enclosure of a famous baby monkey in Japan, they ended up getting the attention from the police instead. So here you have two American influencers traveling all the
Wow. I heard about this in our news. Oh, you did? You heard about it? This is great. Well, this is crazy in my personal opinion. This is crazy here. Oh, Jesus Christ.
way to Japan and entering the enclosure of one of the internet's most beloved animals, Punch the monkey.
Everybody loves Punch the monkey, and maybe a little bit too much. Two Americans were arrested after trying to break into his enclosure at the Ichikawa Zoo in Japan. Police detained Reed Janai Dason and Neil Jabari Duan, both in their 20s. They say one man jumped the fence while the other filmed. Video shows a person in a blue suit with a stuffed emoji head climbing into and around the enclosure. That emoji used to promote meme coin cryptocurrencies. The macaques reportedly were terrified, having gone long on Dogecoin back in 2021. The intruder also was seen with a stuffed toy. The two Curious Georges were arrested and charged with obstructing zoo operations.
Honestly, I would just love to see one headline about influencers visiting another country that doesn't involve someone getting arrested, detained, deported, or becoming the reasons local officials have to rewrite policy and locals hating them. Also,
it's just crazy how people are still like, it's 20-year-olds. That's the funny thing about it. These 20-year-olds are still trying. I wonder why we hate tourists and visitors here. The shitty thing about it is like, it kind of sucks though, because I never got the opportunity to visit Japan and everything like that, and I want to. But I'm like, I don't really blame the Japanese people that they get that they're trying to stigmatize like all tourists and visitors. Like, I don't really blame them. I'm not gonna hate them specifically. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? You know? I'm like, I'm hoping that at least like, you know, whenever I get the chance or the opportunity to go, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't become like a sour mood for me, you know?
Hate the term influencers, even though that's what all the headlines say. I much prefer creators, because who are these people influencing? But regardless, I just want like a headline. Obviously, it's not going to generate as many clicks, but I want a simple headline of something like American influence.
The worst part about it is like, since these people are black, right? It kind of proves the statement of them being like hateful towards black people. That's the funny thing about it, you know? The racism is just gonna dig even deeper.
Visits Japan, enjoys the culture, takes some pictures, enjoys the food, and returns home without a single incident. Is that too much to ask for? But no. Instead, we get this. So according to Japanese authorities, you have 24-year-old Reed Janai Dason and 27-year-old Neil Jabri Duan, where both of them were arrested after an incident in Ichikawa Zoo near Tokyo, where Daison entered the monkey enclosure while Duan was filming from the outside. And authorities say the person who entered the enclosure was wearing a bright blue suit and a giant emoji-style mascot face. Because apparently, if you're going to become an international nuisance, you might as well dress up like some degenerate meme coin mascot. But before we get into more details on the story, we should probably talk about the monkey itself, because this isn't just some random animal at some random zoo. This is Punch. And if you somehow missed the whole story around Punch, you need to understand this monkey has a genuine fan base. The internet became very invested in this monkey's life. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous until you actually look at what happened, because Punch unfortunately was abandoned by his mother shortly after he was born. So Punch was then raised by the zoo staff. And when keepers eventually reintroduced him to the larger monkey troop, he struggled to fit in. And again, unlike most young monkeys, Punch didn't have a mother teaching him how to interact with the other monkeys. So videos showed him approaching adults only to get pushed away. And people started finding this tiny monkey and trying to figure out where he belonged. So you had a whole bunch of videos of Punch dragging around his stuffed orangutan because he didn't have any other monkeys to sit with. So then the internet decided that we're just going to pour infinite love into this monkey.
I've only had Punch for a day and a half. But if anything happened to him, I would
Delete.
everyone in this room and then myself.
And the zoo started launching the hashtag Hang in There Punch. And suddenly, videos that were originally intended as simple zoo updates were being viewed by millions of people around the world. Like, was Punch bullied today? Did he sit next to another monkey today? Did he make a new friend? Every time there was an update, people either celebrated or were worried for him. And I am not even exaggerated by saying people were following Punch the monkey like people, I guess, follow their favorite sports team. And the stuffed orangutan
Interesting.
became a huge part of that story. Everywhere Punch went, he brought his little stuffed orangutan with him. And while visitors thought this was adorable, zoo staff actually viewed it a little bit differently. So according to the zoo, the stuffed animal was essentially acting as a substitute source of comfort. And the goal wasn't for Punch to carry it forever. The goal was for him to eventually gain enough confidence that he wouldn't need it anymore. And little by little, things started improving. So videos showed that Punch was actually spending more and more time with and around other monkeys. And instead of being pushed away, he was actually gradually being accepted. The lonely monkey was finally finding his place. And that's when Punch's popularity exploded. So visitor numbers at the zoo more than doubled. People traveled specifically all the way to Japan just to see him. And people started buying the exact same stuffed orangutan that he carried around. And at one point, the zoo was receiving so much attention that visitors were actually asked to stay quiet around the enclosure and limit how long they were watching the monkeys so they wouldn't become stressed. And then on top of that, people started donating more and more money just because they wanted to support him and the zoo. And eventually, donations reached the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, there were social media pages
Jesus.
dedicated
Oh my God.
entirely to posting updates about Punch. And
It almost feels like the whole thing of the scammer show from the Japanese people who say, like, you know, we are poor and everything like that, or life of being like a business person or something like that. You know, those people specifically, it's like the same exact thing. You know, they see something that, like, you know, someone's struggling or something like that, and they have to give the money to them specifically. You know, because I guess the sympathy towards that. You know, I guess, you know.
websites dedicated entirely to tracking Punch's updates. And I'm not even joking. I mean, there are people whose job appears to be keeping the public informed about the daily activities of one monkey. And at one point,
That's a massive unemployment behavior right there. Dude, there are so many people who have fucking unemployment behavior. It is wild to be keeping track of the monkey itself. On the bad side, people do weird shit, but on the bright side, they make charity and advertising money. That is true at the end of the day. Like, it's like a negative. There's like cons to always everything that's a positive, at least, you know? That makes products so they make more visitors here. Yeah. I'm like, for me specifically, like, when I like, okay, so when I visited like Mexico and El Salvador, right, I didn't go to any of the tourist areas. No, I went to where my family were living during that time, and it's like far away from like any of the main tourist area. Like, we go visit them, right, but we mostly visit the more like the more like Hispanic stuff, you know. I don't really remember the places that I went to because they had, like, you know, I don't remember, it's been a while, number one. I can only recognize it by like photos and everything. But if I go to Japan, right, I'm not gonna go, like, I'll visit some of the main places like where some of the tourists is at, but I mostly want to be a little bit more further away and just kind of like interact with the locals and everything, you know. That's kind of like, it's kind of like the gist of it, you know. Like, I want to be like in the actual culture itself. The same thing when I went to Mexico. I want to be with the culture itself and where the people grew up, you know. Because like I said, you know, I was with my grandma and grandpa before my grandpa passed away anyways, and it was at a pueblo, you know, which is like village, I guess. It's like, is how you say it, I guess. That's kind of like the best way to say it, you know. Mostly is to visit some places, but mostly just to chill and enjoy food. But for me, I just want to visit, you know, and you know, experience the culture itself, you know. And that's kind of like basically it.
even after the incident that we're about to discuss, fans were so worried that websites
maybe
started
make
publishing
friends over
updates
there, you know?
specifically reassuring people
It'd be
that
really
Punch
cool.
had not been injured. Like, think about that for a second. Like, this monkey has reached a level of fame where strangers around the world are checking in on the breaking news updates to make sure that he's having a good day. Honestly, the little guy has better PR than most celebrities out there. And that's exactly why what happened on May 17th caused such a huge reaction. Because May 17th, what I know it as is the Independence Day of Norway. Gratulerer med dagen to all my Norwegians out there. But unfortunately, for all the Punch fans out there, that's when they got jump scared, because these morons decided to do this social media stunt where one of them jumped into the enclosure where Punch was. On the 17th of May of 2026, Raid and Neil, they
Oscar.
arrive here at the zoo. And I do also want to just like reiterate how much effort these guys put into this, because they bought plane tickets, they traveled all the way to Japan, they made it through customs, made it to the zoo, and put on a costume so they could then jump into an enclosure with a monkey. I mean, what a fascinating use of free will. Like, of all things to do,
Such a
why?
dumb thing to
Like,
do.
I get why. They're trying to promote some cryptocurrency. But still, at no point did either of them think, maybe it's not a good idea to jump into an enclosure with a bunch of monkeys here in Japan. But I guess, no, they didn't think that whatsoever. Because let's be real, there is no way they could have done this and not been caught. But regardless, I guess they have more commitment than brains, and they were arrested for this. And the video from the incident shows the dude in the costume climbing over the barrier and dropping down into the enclosure. And immediately, things went exactly the way you would expect. The monkeys didn't want anything to do with this, and witnesses reported that the troops scattered away from the intruder and moved towards higher ground. So nearly 50 to 60 monkeys were inside that enclosure at the time, including Punch. And now all these monkeys suddenly had this giant yellow emoji fall into their neighborhood. But thankfully, that's when zoo staff got in there and no one was hurt and no monkeys were hurt. But the zoo staff later said the animals appeared to be scared by the incident, and the monkeys don't know if they're a part of a prank or not, as
That's
far as
true.
they're concerned. Also, a giant mysterious creature just dropping into the enclosure, you're gonna have a bad day regardless of what.
I don't think I can say this though, but like, it's kind of funny how like these guys are going to an enclosure with a bunch of monkeys. I'll let your thought process think where I'm going with that, but like, that's all I gotta say. How ironic it is, to be frankly honest. It's very ironic how that is, in my personal opinion. True. But like, I'm not, I'm just kind of like pointing the obvious. I wonder if people understand exactly what I'm talking about. Like I said, right? It's not all black people, right? It's just the stupid, dumb black people that are really like, are actually like causing problems in general, right? The worst thing about it, right? Number one, right? The one thing, right? I assume they've already have a stigmatization or so towards the darker skinned people, right? They already have like this sort of like already their mindset. They already think the way how they are, right? To begin with, right? This just kind of pushes it even further. And then it's going to start hating them even more. Even though there's some that come to Japan, right? They come in, they want to enjoy the culture, enjoy the food, enjoy the people. Maybe they come in during a festival or something, right? Maybe they just want to enjoy stuff like that specifically, right? But then like, you got some of these people who come in or so who are causing problems, causing like a ruckus and everything like that. Like take example what's been happening with Johnny Somali or so that happened in South Korea. And then you literally had that one other black guy who's been living in South Korea, right? Saying like, hey, sorry, blah 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 blah, everything. The problem is it's gonna cause a ripple effect, like massively, to be honest. They're gonna be racist even more towards, the black people in general. I say that calling those idiots monkeys is an insult to the monkeys. Well, I'm just saying specifically, throughout the history of like, racism and everything like that, it's kind of ironic or so that he jumps into an enclosure with a bunch of monkeys. Kind of fucking funny, kind of wild in my personal opinion. But like I said, it's not all black people. Like I said, the problem is they are really causing a problem, and and also the thing that has been happening so in Texas with the Carmelo incident, it has also been like, it's also Americans in general. Yeah, also too as well. Like it starts hating quite a bit. But I think to be honest, it's not just an American thing. I think it's just a dark skin thing in general. I think they are like number one, right? You saw what's been happening on Twitter, right? Where Japan and the Western have finally like merged together and everything. And basically they see what they are saying and everything like that. And there's some translation that literally calls the black people some very crazy racial shit. It's kind of wild in my personal opinion, but the problem is it kind of pushes this even further. But mostly time is they get very drunk and do weird stuff, or they just brain is dead. Yeah. It kind of makes sense, to be honest. Like I said, I don't blame the Japanese people becoming racist towards these people. Like I don't blame them whatsoever. I'm like, if you have these people coming into your country and causing a ruckus and everything like that, and they're doing this weird ass shit in your country, I'm like, I can't really fault them at the end of the day. I'm like, they can't do this stuff in Mexico. I know that for a fact. They cannot do this shit in Mexico. If they try to do this shit in Mexico, holy lord, it ain't gonna go very happy for them,
creature you are. But of course, as I hinted at earlier, all of this was tied to some dumb meme coin or a crypto promotion. So that's when I have to remind myself, hey, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Because what do you mean that you're flying across the world to harass a monkey that's known for having social problems? But apparently the stunt was connected to a content competition ran by some cryptocurrency meme coin. And here, I guess...
Excuse me? Wait, so you're telling me that these losers decided to do this for a contest? Brother, I never would have expected that this would be a thing, to be frankly honest. That's wild to hear this, to be honest. I cannot. I really... Jesus Christ. Wow, dude. Wow.
The prize was $1 million. So these giga brains thought if they flew to Japan and jumped into a monkey enclosure, they would win $1 million. Did they win $1 million? No. Because the main problem here is a chance to win $1 million is not the same thing of actually receiving $1 million. If your marketing strategy involves in committing a crime in a foreign country, there's a decent chance that your business plan needs a little bit of workshopping. But hey, what's especially wild is they did defend the stunt afterwards, because according to the report, the goal was simply to give Punch a toy for companionship. Okay, Punch already has a toy, and if you really wanted to do it, you could have given it to the zoo staff. Would have Punch actually received this toy? Probably not. But at least that would have came across as a little bit more genuine. It's almost giving the same energy as showing up to Ronaldo's house with a soccer ball. Like, okay, thank you, but why? And also, you're trespassing. Get out. And apparently this company did actually offer $1 million yen donation to the zoo afterwards, because I guess they didn't want to be associated with these morons. But a lot of people were also kind of wondering why there was no apology from them. But essentially, the internet felt like they were saying, hey, sorry, your fence got broken by someone trying to win our prize. Here's some money. But the key thing they didn't say is the people shouldn't have been climbing on that fence. And you're probably wondering, did this stunt help the crypto? Well, sadly, kind of. Because the token associated with Punch briefly jumped in value after the whole thing got some attention.
I just don't understand. Like, I just really don't understand this. I really don't. The human psyche is just so fascinating to me. As someone from the void who can never wrap, like, we are powerful beings and very smart individuals, but we can never find the reason of like how you guys seem to have like entertainment out of this and just make things popular. I just don't understand. I really don't. This is the one thing that baffles us, like void creatures specifically. It's just something that we will never wrap our head around, to be honest. We really don't.
But, there was a small problem. The token was still reportedly down roughly 94% from the peak. So, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how much that actually helped. And obviously, this is a meme coin, so as soon as it pumped a little bit, it completely retraced. So still, Even after all this attention, the project was nowhere near what it once was. And also, it didn't even take long for the situation to go from viral stunt to criminal case, because the zoo obviously wasn't laughing, and neither were the Japanese authorities.
Of course, nobody was laughing.
Essentially, the consequences just started when he left the enclosure, because almost immediately the zoo began making changes, and officials expanded the restricted viewing area around the monkey enclosure. They also installed anti-intrusion netting, and they started additional patrols in the area. So essentially, these two guys made the viewing experience of genuine fans way worse.
Wow. It only takes a few people to fucking ruin it for everyone else. Wow. Look at what they've done. Look what they have done specifically. It's crazy what they have done. That's crazy, dude. They have to give you like extra like space or so for like, and they have to put security guards to watch over so for this. That is wild to see that, to be honest. Damn, dude. I feel like they're just gonna become a lot stricter. I can tell. Powerful beings, how come we have never seen your powers? Because your mom loves to see it every single night, that's why. No more nice view. Yeah, it's the same thing with the famous picture so from the Konbini store. The one with the from the mountain in the backwards, the Fuji mountain in the back with the Konbini. I forgot literally the name of that. At this point, just remove the enclosure. You can't even see the monkeys. I'm like, you technically still can though, but you can't really look down in the enclosure downstairs anymore. I'm like, but at the end of the day, I'm like, whose fault is it at the end of the day? You know? I'm like, it just kind of, like I said, these people are starting to ruin a lot of. I would not be surprised if they start putting some regulations and laws and everything to be a lot stricter against tourists in general. I feel like there needs to be some kind of thing or so. Like honestly, they need to actually be stricter on these people and actually reprimand them on the laws or so they can actually get some, so no one else can do it. Like honestly, you know. To be honest, Japanese do overreact. But you have to understand on their specific terms. You have to look at it from their perspective. You can't just look at it from your side's perspective. Why are they overreacting? Well, why? What was the reasoning? You have to meet them halfway. If you don't meet them halfway, you're just gonna have problems at this point, you know? So are you talking about the bamboo tree forest? I'm like, that's, you know, if anything, all this means is that foreigners can see the monkeys. Can't see the monkeys. Yeah, that's true, you know. Japan has their own designated areas for where foreigners are not allowed. I'm like, I don't blame them, you know. I really don't blame the Japan themselves doing this, but I feel like they're going to be starting to become more stricter because of this. And it's just going to make the visiting experience a lot, you know, a lot difficult, to be honest. Hey, Fabulous. How you doing there, Hera? You know it.
Viewing experience of genuine fans way worse. Wow. Thank you.
If you're talking about the bamboo thing or so, the people were carving into those trees like they think they're in America, to be frankly honest. I'm like, you don't go into someone else's house and start carving up in their, you know. It wasn't a bamboo tree. I know that there was stuff like that they were cutting down bamboo. I don't know what specific tree you're talking about specifically, but you know. In my opinion, JP have demand social media platforms to follow some new rulings to ban people's accounts. Second, yeah, it is legal. In the legal path, they need to hit these problems, CC pockets, where it hits. Yeah, they need to hit these content creators because these are so-called content creators, you know, influencers or something like that. They need to reprimand them like once and for all. To be honest, they need to reprimand some of these people and like hold them accountable. It was just a regular tree and the cleaning with a nice view. People were going to take pictures where they just removed it. Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, you know, why would you go into someone's place and start writing on their stuff, you know? What happens if I come into your house and start writing on your walls? I'm like, it's part of my culture, you know? I'm like, you can't kick me out, you know? I don't think it was private property, but at the same time, why would you want to do it into a public place? Like, why would you want to start carving on a tree, to be honest? Like I said, how would you like it if I came to carve on your car? It's not on a private property, it's on the side of the road. You parked it on the side of the road, but I can carve in it. You don't like that, do you? Well, you have to understand specifically how they are, to be honest. We do jail or you get banned from visiting here, so you get fully kicked out with your suitcases and etc. So you burned down the car? I didn't say burn down the car, I said write on your car. I said literally mark your car with my engraving on it. It's basically is what I'm saying. They cut the tree? Yeah, but the question is like, why though? Why? No, because you would just replace the car. That's what you would do. Key the car, got it? Yeah, pretty much key the car, basically. Write my markings on it, you know? I'm like, to be honest with you, that's a thing that you see mostly in the movies, most of the time. No one really actually does carvings on an actual tree, to be frankly honest. I think you go too hard with the devil's advocate. Okay, so why are you going to visit to another country? Number one, it's not your place or so to start carving on a random tree, to be honest. Why? Tell me why. Why would you want to do that? I want to hear your logic specifically. Why would you want to do that? But why would you want to do that? I'm asking you why. You're still not answering. Why would you do that? Why would you want to go to another country and then start marking on the tree? Okay, well that's the reason why. There is no reason for you to go to another country and mark, you know, in a tree. If I'm a tourist, I would I'd be respectful as hell. I'm like, at the end of the day, you know. You're the one who brought up this conversation about, you know, they be overreacting, and you just literally said that they chopped down a tree because there was a carving on it. You literally brought up this conversation here. Okay. Let me see here. Let me see here. Well, I can't actually pull this out, to be frankly honest. To be honest, the Japanese do overreact. I remember a story from Trash Taste where there was a popular tree with tourists and they cut it down. But the question is, why did they cut it down? Why carve a tree? There are probably a couple of spots where you can put padlocks on it, and a couple of padlocks on it. Let me see. Let me take a look real quick, just out of curiosity. Let's see. Oh, if it can only help me find it, to be honest. You also gotta be careful where taking pictures it can get you in trouble too. I'll be honest. Well, it depends. Depends on that specific part in general. I'd be curious to see what this actual part is, to be honest. They're talking about the tourist issue that was happening in Mount Fuji's photo spot, not a random tree being removed. I don't think it's that, to be frankly honest. It's not. That is definitely not the. That's the subject in general. To be frankly honest, doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like that's actually it. To be honest. No, it's just mostly been the Lawson thing. There isn't really much of a thing or so of a tree getting cut down. Unless you bring me the evidence or so for that specific topic, I don't think I see anything of that sort of nature. That's kind of like basically it. The only one that I know or so where they cut down stuff like that was basically the bamboo forest. It's off my memory. They only did the bamboo thing. That's the only thing that I know from my personal knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's like, why are you gonna carve on it? To be frankly honest, there's no point of you be carving because it's a bamboo forest that they did, where like tourists have been carving into the bamboos themselves. So all they do is just cut it down. Started cutting down specifically on that sort of nature. Let me see. So. So the Kyoto authorities were forced to cut down parts of the iconic Arashiyama bamboo grove after thousands of tourists carved their initials and messages into the stalks. The controversial measures were taken to push the grove further back from the path, protecting the plants and preventing copycat vandalism. So this is the only one. This might be the one you're probably talking about, you know? But that's kind of like basically it. Following the post-pandemic rebound, the tourists the damage surveys revealed to be 350 bamboo stalks were scarred with names, dates, and symbols etched using a knife or a key. The health risk experts that the Kyoto Botanical Garden warned that deep etching prevents the bamboo from properly photosynthesizing, potentially causing the plants to wither, die, or fall over. So stops at the copycat vandalism to clear away dead stalks. Kyoto's city's officials and local associations removed about 20 severely damaged bamboos, along with 30-meter stretch. This allowed them to physically widen the space between the walking path and the bamboo stalks, so visitors could no longer reach them. Let's see. So the locals of the shrines owners expressing the outrages over the destructions of the sacred spaces and the social media vandalization. In response, the community has taken multi-pronged approach to curb Meiwaku nuisance tourism. And that's kind of like basically it, so. Yeah, it's pretty much that's what happened because they decided to because this is what they decided to do, as you can see here from some of the photos in general, that they decided to like etch their. You see how fucked up they are, basically, you know. This is the only knowledge that I know of specifically about tree getting cut down, little bamboos. That's about it. But this is what they basically do. I'm like, I can't blame them at the end of the day for them what they've been doing. So. And it's part of their culture specifically. As you can see here, as from like many photos in general, that they just been kind of like, you know, they just been doing that specifically. So I'm like, can I blame the Japanese getting upset? Not really, to be frankly honest. It's just kind of like, it's just these people basically like think that they can do it in other people's homes, you know, because it's at the end of the day, it's a different country. You're visiting their country, you know. It's like basically visiting someone's house, you know. And that's kind of like basically it.
And they even started talking about if, you know, photography and filming near the enclosure would be restricted or even banned. So think about that for a second. You have millions of people spending months following the punch stories. Families are traveling across the world to see this monkey. That opportunity might be removed. All because two complete morons thought it was a good idea to climb into the enclosure to try to farm attention for their meme coin. But the charges they got, depending on which report you read, reads a little bit different because they're all being translated. So some outlets are calling it obstructing zoo operations and others described it as disrupting business. But regardless of the wording, the important part is the Japanese authorities didn't simply escort these guys out of the zoo. They actually arrested them. And unfortunately, every time stories like this happen, it seems like the dudes are like, well, come on, it was just a prank, bro. And that's kind of what they were saying. And honestly, that's not even that far from their response. But authorities referred the case to the prosecutors on suspicion of forcible obstruction of business. And both men have denied doing anything wrong. I don't know. To me, getting content this way
That's
is probably
actually
the
pretty
dumbest
stupid in
thing
my personal
possible. Like,
opinion.
why would you ever become a public nuisance and create chaos in hope of attention? Because then that content's just going to be used against you. Like I've said this in yesterday's video and in so many videos before. Why would you ever want to be the star witness in the case against yourself? Just sounds backwards to me. And unfortunately for them, the internet didn't think it was as funny as what they thought because, you know, everyone was worried about Punch. So, you know, Punch here in this case is being seen as the victim. And these guys are the perpetrators who are ruining it for everyone. So obviously, it's safe to say nobody likes these influencers now. But hey, I guess if the goal was attention, they got some attention. It's just negative attention. And of course, they didn't win the prizes they wanted to. And they're essentially banned from Japan now. Because you might be wondering, why am I talking about this case now and not right when it happened? Well, I wanted to see what actually happened to these guys before I covered it. And there is an update to the story, but regardless, I guess we've just reached a point
that's
in
interesting.
internet
Did not know
history
about
where
that.
viral animals need their own security detail. This is pretty sad. But at the end of the day, Japan fined them with 300,000 yen, which at the time of recording this video is roughly $1,900. And then on top of that,
Really? Really? You just only fined them for like 2,000?
because of how Japan's rules are, they're essentially banned from Japan for at least 5 years because of this. Because
Really? Like, they're not gonna get any punishment whatsoever? I just hope JP people, I mean, that's normal. Yeah, but I'm like, I get it, you know. I know how Japan is specifically, but like, we can all agree it's not a good punishment. I'm gonna be honest with you. I know JP will see the real issues and not just color, because it's mainly due to the problem of content creators. There's also a problem with the legal system not be stricter because it ain't hold on, give me a second. Because it ain't enough for the travel ban. You got to make these people pay a heavy fine, because before all this CC mess, JP, we're having problems with the Chinese tourists. The problem is they don't, I assume most of the Japanese people don't follow Western content creators or understand what's happening in the Western creator space, right? So they really don't know specifically about these people in general. So they kind of like think like, you know, people who are like dark skin colors are the ones who are literally going to cause the problems the most. That's the reason why. So you can't really blame them for not doing that, you know? You're committing a crime in another country and you get banned for a time, kind of almost regardless of the crime. It is, to be honest. It's JP code. Yeah, I understand. You know, holy cow! It's so the 5-year ban is nothing. Yeah, 5-year ban is gonna be nothing because they're probably gonna come back after 5 years. To be frankly honest, I'm like, I don't know, dude. In my personal opinion, it's just kind of like, it just would have been better if they got the book thrown at. I think Japan needs to be a little bit stricter, at least when these kinds of clowns, because at the end of the day, they're just gonna get away with it, and they're just gonna come back and do it again. You know, what are they gonna do? You're gonna fine me again for another 2,000. You know, roughly around $2,000. I think that's what it was. I'm just gonna come back again. You're just gonna ban me again for another 5 years, and I'll just come back again. You know. Like, they don't really get any, you know, repercussions on their actual, like, actions, you know? I'm like, at the end of the day, there's a thing or so, you know, there's a saying or so, right? It's like, you fuck around and you're gonna find out. But unfortunately, they're not gonna do that. I wish they were a little bit stricter and actually, like, you know, hand them the book or so and be like, here you go. So they gotta make someone an example. They should have made Johnny Somali the example, but that's just me anyways. They should have made him the example, but it's Japan. I'm like, what do you expect? I've seen some articles or so of how the crime rate is over there, especially with the yandere girl who literally like basically almost killed her boyfriend, you know? I'm like, that was pretty crazy in my personal opinion, and how like very lenient it is over there with some of the kind of like some of the laws and everything like that. So I was kind of hoping, you know.
you can't enter Japan with a
True.
criminal record within 5 years. And the keyword there is it's at least 5 years, because after the 5
No,
years,
actually, they did not win any money. They were trying to win money for a competition for $1 million. They were trying to, but they didn't. So they didn't win any money. Just letting you know that. So they were trying to do it to win for $1 million for a cryptocurrency competition or something like that. I have no idea, to be honest.
your time, they can still deny you from entering the country. So at the end of the day, was the stunt worth being held in jail for about a month, $1,900 each in fines, and being banned from Japan for like 5 years? I don't think so. And then of course, on top of that, they didn't win the $1 million they were trying to win.
I told you.
I guess they just leave this entire situation being the big idiots. Regardless though, this is still just a net negative to society, because now
Yes.
they just made it harder for everyone else to see the monkey
Yes.
that has so many fans. I
Not
guess
just the monkeys in general, but there's been a lot of like regulations or so across Japan, especially with the Lawson gas station with the Fuji Mountain in the background, the famous photo. There's that one too as well. And then now we have this one. And then there's also places that restrict foreigners / tourists to come in certain areas. And there's also businesses that also forbid tourists / foreigners to come eat in their establishments or whatever other sort of thing, you know?
only good thing about this is it seems like they were not rewarded from this, because we should really not be rewarding people committing crimes for attention online. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do I know? Either way, it just seems like they just got rugged here. But other than that, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Peace.
I would not be surprised if they start becoming a lot stricter to a lot of the tourists / you know, people coming to visit, you know? So that's all I gotta say. Like I straight up wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, in my personal opinion. Tree, what is this? Is this a short or so for that tree talk conversation that we had earlier? I'll take a look at it in a moment. But I don't know. Overall, I don't know. Like I said, I want to go visit. Don't get me wrong, you know. Yeah, they're already very strict with tourists in Japan. Yeah, but I feel like the problem is like they're kind of like pretty lenient on it when it comes to like the punishment wise in general. So that is the only tree news I can find. Oh, okay, I'll take a look at it in a moment then. But honestly, I would not be surprised if they go a little bit more stricter and adding some like regulations and everything like that, you know? Which gonna kind of suck because like I want to visit, but if they do it or so, it's like I can't really argue against it because it's just kind of like, it's like, well, you know, what do you expect, you know? They kind of like ruin it for everyone else to begin with, so hopefully it doesn't get to that crazy distinctiveness at least, where they just start hating every single person that comes visiting, so. But yeah, anyways, that's the end of the video. You guys can comment, like, subscribe to all that fancy jazzy stuff. Honestly, I'm scared. That's about it. I'm just kind of terrified or so, because it just feels like if I go visit or so, I feel like my experience would be kind of sour to some degree. So it's just kind of like, I'm hoping it doesn't end that way. I'm hoping at least I can go over there, at least like, you know, have a fun time and everything like that. One day JP will be fed up and make a tourist area with guarding patrolling and you can't leave the area. Honestly, I would not be surprised if they do something like that. Damn, I will have to send in packages of Yuri books to Sunako. Damn, dude. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like that. Like it will get to a boiling point where literally they will do something like that. Tourists become zoo animals. They'll become the new monkeys, to be honest. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Honestly, the bamboo incident, the Lawson gas station, the famous photo. Anyways, now the monkeys, the punch the monkey has gotten some restrictiveness. What I'd be curious to see what else. Also, like certain restaurants and certain buildings or so or whatever don't allow tourists / you know, foreigners to come in. So I'd be very curious to see like what's going to be the next thing on the chopping block that they're going to like restrict or put some guardrails or put security or something, you know. I'd be so curious what's gonna be the next one, but we'll see anyways. But yeah, that's the end of the video, and peace.